Have you ever wondered why the person who feels closest to you is also the one who pulls away the hardest? One moment, you feel chosen, seen, almost safe, and the next they disappear emotionally, leaving you replaying every word, every look, every moment, trying to figure out what you did wrong. That confusion isn't random, and it isn't meaningless. If you're here, it's probably because you're stuck inside that loop right now, wanting clarity, wanting peace, wanting to know if what you're feeling is real, or if you're just hoping for something that isn't there. Here's the truth: most people never tell you. The behavior that hurts the most is often the behavior that means the most, especially when you're dealing with someone who avoids closeness, not because they don't feel, but because they feel too much. That push and pull you're experiencing isn't an accident, it's a signal. And once you understand what it's really saying, everything shifts. The anxiety softens, the self-blame loosens its grip, and the chaos in your head starts to organize itself into something you can finally understand. Right now, your nervous system is exhausted. You've been scanning for signs, overanalyzing tone, timing messages, wondering if silence means rejection or just space. You tell yourself you shouldn't care this much, yet you do. Because when it's good, it feels rare, deep, almost electric. And when it's gone, it feels like withdrawal. That emotional whiplash creates attachment. It makes your mind chase resolution. Your brain craves certainty, and when it doesn't get it, it fills the gap with fear. But here's what changes everything. Not all distance is disinterest. Some distance is protection. For an avoidant, emotional closeness doesn't register as comfort. It registers as threat. Their system learned early that relying on someone comes at a cost. So when feelings deepen, alarms go off. They don't think, I'm in love. They feel, I'm losing control. And control is how they survive. That's why the withdrawal often happens after connection, after vulnerability, after moments that matter. Not because they didn't feel them, but because they did. Intensity overwhelms their system. And the fastest way they know how to regulate is to shut down, to go quiet, to create space. From the outside, it feels cruel, personal, like abandonment. But internally, it's a reflex, not a strategy to hurt you, a strategy to breathe. And that's the part that changes how you see everything. Because once you realize the distance isn't about your value, you stop shrinking yourself to earn closeness. You stop chasing clarity from someone who can't give it in words. You start listening to patterns instead of promises. You begin to understand that love doesn't always show up loudly. Sometimes it shows up inconsistently, quietly, in returns, not pursuits. This doesn't mean you accept pain. It means you stop misinterpreting it. You stop telling yourself a story where you're unlovable or too much. You replace it with a story rooted in reality, one where their behavior has meaning, but it doesn't get to define your worth. That understanding alone creates power. Power to regulate yourself. Power to respond instead of react. Power to decide what kind of connection you are willing to stay in. There is a way out of the confusion. Not by forcing them to change, not by proving yourself, but by seeing clearly. And clarity is the one thing anxiety cannot survive. Once you understand what this behavior really means, you stop feeling lost inside it. You stop chasing ghosts, and you start standing on solid ground again. Clarity gives you power, but power only matters if you use it. And this is where everything gets real. Because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. You start noticing how your body reacts before your mind catches up. The tightening in your chest when they go quiet. The spike of hope when they return. The cycle has been running you. Quietly, relentlessly, and now you're standing at the edge of a choice that will shape what happens next. Here's the part that most people avoid. Understanding them is not the same as sacrificing yourself. Empathy does not mean endurance. Their fear explains the behavior, but it doesn't erase the impact. And if you keep shrinking to make them feel safe, you slowly disappear inside the connection. That's the cost no one warns you about. You don't lose them. You lose you. Right now, your nervous system has been trained to wait, to brace, to stay alert for signs of warmth or withdrawal. That hypervigilance feels like love, but it's actually survival. Your brain learned that closeness is unpredictable, so it stays on guard, always ready, always hoping, always tired. And the longer this goes on, the harder it becomes to tell the difference between chemistry and anxiety. This is where urgency matters, because patterns don't resolve themselves. They repeat, unless something interrupts them. And the interruption never comes from forcing another person to feel safer. It comes from you changing how you show up. When you stop overfunctioning, the dynamic shifts. When you stop chasing, the space becomes visible. When you regulate yourself, you stop feeding the cycle that keeps you stuck. Avoidance feels safest when emotions are calm and contained, not intense, not demanding. Calm is what signals safety. That doesn't mean you go silent or suppress your needs. It means you ground yourself so your presence doesn't feel like pressure. Consistency without pursuit, warmth without urgency, boundaries without punishment. That combination does something powerful. It removes the threat response. And here's the part most people don't expect. When you stop chasing, something wakes up in them. Not always immediately, not always dramatically. But slowly, they notice the absence of pressure. They feel the emotional space. And in that space, curiosity can return. Choice can return. They move closer not because they're afraid of losing you, but because they finally feel safe enough to want you. But listen carefully. This only works if it's real, not a tactic, not a performance. If you're secretly waiting, counting days, monitoring their reactions, your system is still locked in fear. True shift happens when you genuinely reclaim your center, when your life feels full again, when your self-worth is no longer negotiated through someone else's availability. That's when everything changes. You stop measuring love by intensity. You start measuring it by stability. You stop romanticizing inconsistency. You start honoring peace. And suddenly, the question is no longer whether they love you. The question becomes whether this love meets you where you are. This is where belief comes in. Belief that you are allowed to want more. Belief that connection should not feel like emotional labor. Belief that love can be steady, not something you have to earn through patience and pain. That belief is dangerous to old patterns. It disrupts them. It demands alignment, and alignment creates a shishin. You speak more honestly. You pause instead of panic. You choose responses that protect your nervous system, not to manipulate, not to punish, but to stay whole. That wholeness is felt, even by someone who avoids closeness, especially by them. If they move closer, it's because the environment changed. If they don't, it's because the distance was always there. Either way, you are no longer trapped in confusion. You are standing in truth, calm, grounded, awake. And once you experience that level of clarity, you don't go back. You don't beg for reassurance. You don't chase connection. You attract what can meet you. And if someone can't, you finally have the strength to let go without losing yourself. Letting go of confusion is only the beginning. What follows is responsibility, the kind that changes your life. Because once you stop romanticizing chaos, you see how much energy you've been pouring into waiting for messages, waiting for reassurance, waiting for someone else to decide when closeness is allowed. That waiting has cost you presence. It has cost you peace. And deep down, you already know that. There is a moment when awareness turns uncomfortable. When you realize how familiar this pattern feels, not just with them, but in other places too, where love had to be earned, where safety felt conditional, where you learned to stay alert instead of relaxed. That recognition stings. But it also cracks something open, because patterns repeat until they're interrupted by truth. And the truth is this: you were never asking for too much. You were asking the wrong person to give what they don't yet know how to sustain. That doesn't make them bad, it makes them limited. And limits matter when your emotional health is on the line. Love cannot thrive where you are constantly bracing for impact. This is where urgency sharpens. Because every time you override your own discomfort to preserve connection, your system learns that your needs come second. Over time, that lesson becomes identity. You become the one who waits, who understands, who stays quiet to keep the peace. And slowly, your voice fades. Not because you lost it, but because you stopped using it. Something in you is ready to change that. You wouldn't be here otherwise. There is a part of you that wants more than explanations. It wants alignment. It wants a connection that doesn't require constant emotional translation. That desire is not weakness, it's instinct. It's the part of you that knows love should feel like expansion, not contraction. This is the moment to act differently. Not louder, not harder, but cleaner. You stop chasing emotional breadcrumbs. You stop filling in gaps with hope. You respond instead of react. You choose calm over urgency. And that choice sends a signal louder than words ever could. It tells your nervous system that you are safe with yourself. When you anchor into that safety, everything reorganizes. Your energy changes. Your boundaries firm up. You stop negotiating your worth through availability, and people feel that shift, especially someone who is avoidant. They sense when you are no longer trying to pull them closer. The absence of pressure creates space. And in that space, their true capacity reveals itself. This is where courage matters, because clarity doesn't guarantee the outcome you want. It guarantees the outcome you need. If they step forward, it's because the connection can breathe. If they don't, it's because the distance was never about timing. It was about readiness. Either way, you are no longer suspended in uncertainty. And here is the deeper transformation. You begin to trust yourself again. Your body stops scanning for threat. Your mind quiets. You remember what it feels like to laugh without checking your phone, to rest without waiting, to feel whole without being chosen in that moment. That wholeness becomes your new standard. From that place, love looks different. You are no longer impressed by intensity without consistency. You are no longer hooked by mystery. You recognize safety as attraction. You recognize steadiness as desire. And that shift rewires what you tolerate and what you invite. This is bigger than one person. This is about breaking a cycle that kept you stuck in longing, about choosing relationships that meet you in the open, not halfway in the shadows, about believing that love does not need to hurt to be real. You don't need to force closure. You become it. You don't need to demand clarity. You embody it. And when you live from that place, everything aligns accordingly. You stop chasing love. You start allowing it to find you where you already stand. Allowing love to find you only works when you stop abandoning yourself. And this is the part that demands honesty, not the kind you perform for others, but the kind you hold privately, the kind that asks whether you've been confusing patience with self-betrayal, whether you've been calling anxiety intuition, whether you've been staying because it almost works. There is a quiet grief that comes with waking up, grief for the ion of you that kept hoping harder would change the outcome, grief for the time spent waiting in emotional limbo. That grief deserves respect because it marks growth. It means you are no longer asleep inside the pattern. You are present, and presence changes everything. Now the stakes are higher. Because once you see clearly, going back costs more. You can't unknow what your body has been telling you. You can't unfeel the tension that came from uncertainty. You can't pretend that crumbs feel like nourishment. The awareness raises the standard, and standards reshape your future. This is where fear tries to negotiate. It whispers that leaving the familiar is risky, that starting over is exhausting, that maybe if you just hold on a little longer, things will shift. But fear always argues for comfort over truth, and comfort is what kept you stuck. Truth is what sets you free. Choosing differently doesn't require dramatic exits. It requires internal alignment. You stop explaining yourself to someone who won't listen. You stop proving your worth through endurance. You stop investing in potential and start responding to reality. These are quiet decisions, but they compound, and they change the direction of your life. Something powerful happens when you commit to your own emotional safety. Your nervous system recalibrates. You breathe deeper. You sleep better. You feel less reactive, less consumed. Space opens up inside you. And in that space, clarity grows. You begin to recognize what you actually want, not what you settled for. This is how self-trust is rebuilt. Not through affirmations, but through follow-through. Each time you honor a boundary, you teach your system that you can be relied on. Each time you walk away from confusion, you reinforce your worth. That trust becomes your foundation. And from that foundation, everything else rises. Love does not need to be chased. It does not need to be deciphered. It does not hide behind silence or mixed signals. Real connection feels grounded. It feels mutual. It meets you without making you question yourself. Once you experience that, even briefly, your tolerance for chaos disappears. This is not about blaming someone for their limitations. It's about accepting them without sacrificing yourself. You can hold compassion without attachment. You can understand without staying. That distinction is maturity. And maturity is magnetic. As you change, the dynamic changes. Some people fall away, others step up. That is not loss. That is alignment. The connections that remain are the ones that can meet you at this level. The rest were lessons, necessary, painful, but complete. There is strength in choosing peace over intensity, in choosing steadiness over longing, in choosing yourself even when it's uncomfortable. That strength grows every time you act from clarity instead of fear. And soon it becomes who you are. This journey was never about decoding someone else's behavior. It was about reclaiming your power, about remembering that love should not cost you your sense of self, about trusting that what is meant for you will not require you to shrink. Stand in that truth. Let it guide your choices. Let it shape your boundaries. Let it redefine what you accept. Because when you stop settling for almost, you make room for something real, something safe, something that meets you fully. And when that happens, why? Won't need signs or explanations. You'll feel it, calm, clear, certain, and you'll know you chose yourself at the moment it mattered most. Choosing yourself doesn't end the story. It begins a new one. Because once you stop bending, life starts responding differently. Your energy changes first. Quieter, stronger, less reactive. You are no longer pulled by every shift in someone else's mood. You move from grounded intention. That shift is subtle, but it's seismic. At first, it feels unfamiliar. You're used to intensity, used to longing, used to earning closeness through effort. Peace can feel boring when your system has been trained on chaos. But stay here. This calm is not emptiness. It is capacity. It is space where something real can finally enter. Now the urgency sharpens again, because patterns don't just live in romance. They echo everywhere, in friendships where you overgive, in work where you overextend, in moments where you silence yourself to stay liked. This is the root being addressed, and once you change it here, it changes everywhere. You start noticing how often you used to override your instincts, how often you felt something was off but stayed anyway. You called it patience, loyalty, love. But your body knew the truth long before your mind caught up. That wisdom was always there. You're just listening now. Listening changes behavior. You pause instead of pushing. You speak plainly instead of hinting. You walk away from ambiguity instead of trying to solve it. These choices feel small, but they stack. And soon, your life looks different because you are different. This is where belief becomes embodied. You no longer just think you deserve more. You act like key it. You don't chase what wavers. You don't wait for clarity that never comes. You meet people where they are, then decide if that place works for you. That is power in its cleanest form. Some will not rise to meet you. That can hurt. Even when you're prepared, loss still stings. But notice the quality of that pain. It is clean. It passes through instead of lodging inside you. It doesn't erode your self-respect. It doesn't leave you questioning your worth. That difference matters. Others will surprise you. They will show up consistently. They will communicate without disappearing. They will not make you guess. At first, you might brace for the drop, but it doesn't come. And slowly, your nervous system learns a new rhythm, one built on safety, not suspense. This is how healing becomes visible, not through dramatic breakthroughs, but through quiet consistency, through days where you feel steady instead of spun out, through nights where your mind rests instead of races, through relationships that add to your life instead of consuming it. The old pull toward avoidant patterns loses its grip, not because you became cold, but because you became whole. You no longer confuse emotional unavailability with depth. You no longer mistake distance for mystery. You see clearly now, and clarity is irreversible. This is the moment where your story turns from reaction to creation. You choose what you allow. You choose what you invest in. You choose to build a life that does not depend on someone else's capacity to stay. That choice is freedom. Freedom does not isolate you. It refines you. It filters out what cannot meet you. It draws in what can, and what arrives feels different. It feels mutual. It feels steady. It feels like relief. You didn't lose anything by stepping into your power. You recovered yourself. You reclaimed time, energy, presence. You stopped negotiating with uncertainty and started aligning with truth. That alignment changes outcomes in ways you can't yet see, but you will feel. This journey was never about fixing someone else. It was about remembering who you are when you stop abandoning yourself. And once you remember that, you move differently, you love differently, you live differently. Hold that, protect it, build from it. Because the life that meets you next is shaped by the standard you just set. And that standard is no longer confusion, it is clarity, it is calm, it is self-respect, and it will guide you exactly where you need to go. Clarity becomes your compass now, not emotion. You no longer move based on spikes of hope or waves of fear. You move based on alignment. And alignment is unforgiving in the best way. It shows you where you've been compromising. It shows you where you've been settling. It shows you where you've been calling struggle love. This is where the transformation locks in. Because once you stop craving intensity, you start craving truth. You stop needing someone to activate your nervous system just to feel alive. You realize peace is not dull. Peace is powerful. Peace is what allows you to build something that lasts. The urgency now is internal. Not to chase, not to fix, but to protect what you've reclaimed. Because the world will test this version of you. Old dynamics will knock. Familiar energy will try to pull you back. Not because it's right, but because it's familiar. And familiarity is seductive. This is where discipline matters. Emotional discipline. The kind that says no even when yes would feel easier. The kind that walks away from mixed signals instead of romanticizing them. The kind that trusts actions over explanations. This discipline is not rigid. It is loving. It is self-respect in motion. You begin to notice how your standards ripple outward. Conversations deepen. Connections clarify. You no longer linger in spaces that drain you. You choose environments that support who you are becoming. This isn't about perfection. It's about direction. Direction gives meaning to pain. It reframes everything you went through. The confusion wasn't pointless. The longing wasn't wasted. It sharpened your awareness. It taught you what you can no longer tolerate. It prepared you for something healthier by showing you what isn't. Now you understand that avoidant behavior was never a measure of your worth. It was a mirror reflecting unresolved fear. And you no longer take responsibility for fear that isn't yours. You release the need to be chosen by someone who cannot choose consistently. That releases liberation. Liberation doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives with relief, with steadiness, with mornings where your mind is quiet, with evenings where your body is relaxed, with a sense of enoughness that doesn't depend on being pursued. From this place, you become intentional. You invest where there is reciprocity. You speak when something matters. You leave when something doesn't align. You stop bargaining with reality. You accept it. And acceptance gives you leverage. Leverage changes how love finds you. You are no longer trying to convince someone to stay. You are evaluati. NG, whether they deserve access. That shift is subtle, but it changes the entire dynamic. You are no longer auditioning. You are choosing. Choosing yourself creates a gravitational pull. Not everyone will feel it, but the right ones will. The ones who are emotionally available. The ones who don't disappear when things deepen. The ones who don't make you question your instincts. They recognize your steadiness because it matches theirs. This is where belief becomes embodied truth. You believe in love that feels safe because you've created safety within yourself. You believe in consistency because you practice it. You believe in mutual effort because you no longer overextend to compensate for someone else's lack. The old story loses relevance. The one where love had to be earned through patience and pain. The one where distance was interpreted as depth. That story dissolves, and in its place, A new one forms, one rooted in clarity, one grounded in respect. This is the life that opens when you stop chasing unavailable love. A life where connection feels nourishing, where communication is direct, where presence is steady, where you don't have to guess. You didn't become harder, you became clearer. You didn't close your heart, you protected it. And because of that, it remains open to what can truly meet you. Carry this forward. Let it inform every choice, every boundary, every yes and no. Because the moment you chose yourself, you set a standard that reshaped your future. And from here on, what enters your life will have to rise to meet it. That standard is alive now. It isn't an idea anymore, it's something you feel in your body, a line you won't cross again. And because it's embodied, not imagined, it changes how you move through the world. You don't hesitate as much. You don't second-guess your instincts. You trust the quiet signals that used to be drowned out by noise. This is where momentum becomes irreversible, because the moment you stop betraying yourself, your confidence stabilizes. Not loud confidence, not performative confidence, grounded confidence. The kind that doesn't need validation, the kind that doesn't chase reactions, the kind that stays steady even when someone pulls away. That steadiness is powerful. It disrupts old dynamics immediately. People sense when you are no longer dependent on their attention, when you are no longer available for emotional push and pull. That shift alone rewrites how others treat you. Some resist it, some respect it. Both outcomes reveal truth. Now the urgency is clear. This version of you requires maintenance. Old habits will try to return when you're tired, when you're lonely, when nostalgia softens the edges of memory. But remember this: missing someone does not mean they were right for you. Longing does not mean alignment. Chemistry does not mean compatibility. You know this now, so you act from wisdom, not impulse. You let feelings exist without letting them drive the wheel. You don't rush to soothe discomfort by reaching for someone who once felt familiar. You sit with the sensation. You let it pass. And every time you do, your strength compounds. This is how self-respect becomes instinct. You no longer need to remind yourself of your worth. Your behavior reflects it automatically. You choose environments that support your nervous system. You engage in conversations that feel mutual. You walk away from confusion without needing closure. Closure comes from alignment, not explanations. And you've already aligned. That's why things feel quieter, clearer, more intentional. You're no longer living in reaction to someone else's capacity. You're living in response to your own values. Values simplify life. They narrow your focus. They reduce noise. You stop entertaining what doesn't meet you. You stop fantasizing about what could be. You see what is. And that realism is not cynical. It's freeing. From this place, love becomes less dramatic and more profound. It's not about highs and lows. It's about presence. It's about reliability. It's about knowing where you stand without asking. That kind of connection doesn't drain you. It strengthens you. And here's the part that matters most. You didn't harden yourself to get here. You softened toward yourself. You learned to listen. You learned to pause. You learned to choose yourself even when it felt uncomfortable. That softness is not weakness. It's discernment. Discernment protects your heart without closing it. It allows you to remain open while being selective. It allows you to love deeply without losing yourself. That balance is rare. And it's the result of everything you've walked through. The old narrative no longer defines you. The one where love meant uncertainty, where effort replaced reciprocity, where distance was mistaken for depth. That chapter is complete, not because you forced an ending, but because you outgrew it. What replaces it is quieter but stronger. A life where your energy is invested wisely, where your time is respected, where your presence is valued, where connection feels like a place you rest, not a place you perform. This is the reward of choosing yourself consistently. Not once, not when it's easy, but over and over again, in small moments, in private decisions, in the way you respond to what no longer aligns. Carry this forward with intention. Let it shape your standards. Let it guide your choices. Let it remind you that love is not something you chase. It's something that meets you when you're standing firmly in who you are. You didn't lose love by walking away from confusion. You cleared the path for something real, something steady, something that doesn't require you to question yourself. And from this place, everything that enters your life will feel different because you are different, grounded, clear, awake. And that is the version of you that builds a life worth staying in. You are no longer waiting to be chosen. That shift alone rewrites your reality. Waiting drains power, choosing generates it. And now, every part of you is learning how to live from that place. Not rushed, not reactive, rooted. This is where your life stops orbiting other people's capacity. You no longer arrange your days around someone else's moods. You no longer read into silence. You no longer twist yourself into the shape that keeps connection alive. You let truth do the sorting. Truth is clean. It doesn't argue. It doesn't bargain. It simply shows you what is sustainable and what is not. And when you allow yourself to see clearly, you stop clinging to versions of love that require self-erasure. There is strength in this kind of clarity. It doesn't need to announce itself. It's felt in how you respond, in how you pause, in how you walk away from what once hooked you. That strength is built in moments no one sees, moments where you choose regulation over reaction, dignity over desperation. You are not cold, you are conscious. You are not guarded, you are discerning. You know the difference now. You know that love should not keep your nervous system in a constant state of alert. You know that connection should feel like support, not suspense. This awareness raises the stakes because you can't go back to pretending. You can't unknow what it feels like to be grounded. You can't unlearn the cost of staying too long in uncertainty. Once you feel the relief of alignment, confusion becomes unbearable. So you act from that knowing. You don't linger in gray areas. You don't chase explanations. You don't stay where effort is one-sided. These choices feel firm, but they are rooted in self-respect, not fear. And here's the truth that lands hardest. When someone avoids closeness because they are overwhelmed by love, that still does not obligate you to absorb the impact. Their fear can be real and still incompatible with your needs. Understanding does not mean enduring. This is where compassion matures. You can wish someone healing without waiting for it. You can care without compromising yourself. You can release without resentment. That balance is not easy, but it is powerful. As you hold this line, something inside you settles. Your body learns that it doesn't need to brace anymore. Your mind stops spinning stories. You become present again. And presence changes how you experience everything. You notice joy in ordinary moments. You feel steadier in your decisions. You stop mistaking emotional intensity for meaning. You recognize peace as attraction. That recognition changes who you allow close. From this place, love arrives differently. It doesn't shock your system. It doesn't pull you into obsession. It unfolds steadily. It feels mutual. It feels safe. At first, it may feel unfamiliar. But unfamiliar does not mean wrong. It means new. And if old patterns try to resurface, you see them immediately. You don't shame yourself for noticing. You simply choose differently, again and again. That repetition is how identity changes. You are no longer proving your worth through patience. You are honoring it through choice. You are no longer hoping someone will meet you. You are meeting yourself fully. And that becomes the standard others must rise to. This journey was never about decoding avoidant behavior to stay longer. It was about understanding it well enough to stop personalizing it, to stop chasing it, to stop building your life around it. You now know that love is not something you decipher through pain. It is something you recognize through consistency. It is not hidden behind distance. It is present in reliability, in effort, in clarity. Stand in that knowing. Let it guide every connection moving forward. Let it protect your energy. Let it remind you that you are not here to be half met. You are here to build a life that feels stable, a love that feels mutual, a future that does not require you to abandon yourself. And now that you see clearly, there is no turning back. Only forward, into alignment, into self-respect, into a version of love that meets you without fear. That is the direct. Chan, you are moving, steady, awake, unavailable for confusion, ready for something real. Ready for something real means you no longer bargain with doubt. You no longer try to decode silence. You no longer wait for proof that should already be there. You stand where you are solid and you let everything else reveal itself. That alone is a declaration, a line drawn, a promise kept to yourself. This is where the weight lifts, not because life becomes perfect, but because you stop carrying what was never yours. You release responsibility for someone else's fear. You stop absorbing confusion as if it's intimacy. You reclaim the energy that was leaking into overthinking, hoping, and waiting. That reclaimed energy becomes fuel. Fuel changes movement. You begin to act from intention instead of reaction. You choose environments that feel calm. You invest in connections that respond, not retreat. You let go of fantasies built on potential and anchor yourself in what is present. That anchoring stabilizes everything. Stability is not dull. It's powerful. It gives you room to grow. It gives you clarity to see opportunities you missed while you were consumed. It gives you the capacity to build something meaningful without constantly managing emotional fallout. This is where momentum accelerates. You start to notice how much lighter you feel when you're not monitoring someone else's availability. How much clearer your mind is when you're not bracing for distance. How much stronger your voice sounds when you're not afraid of rocking the boat. That strength has been waiting for you, and now the stakes are undeniable. Because every time you choose clarity over confusion, you reinforce a new identity, an identity that does not chase what runs, an identity that does not shrink to stay connected, an identity that knows love should add to your life, not consume it. This identity demands congruence. Your words match your actions. Your boundaries match your values. Your choices reflect your worth. There is no performance here, no strategy, just alignment. And alignment is magnetic. People respond to this version of you differently. Some feel exposed, some feel inspired, some drift away because they cannot meet you here. That is not rejection, that is sorting. And sorting is necessary for growth. You are no longer afraid of losing what was never stable. You are more interested in building what can last. That shift changes what you tolerate. It changes what you prioritize. It changes the pace at which you move. Slower, clearer, more deliberate. This is where belief turns into action. You protect your time. You honor your energy. You speak up when something doesn't sit right. You leave when alignment disappears. These are not dramatic gestures. They are daily decisions, and daily decisions shape destiny. The past no longer pulls you backward. It informs you. It sharpens your discernment. It reminds you of what you survived and what you will no longer repeat. You carry the lesson, not the weight. That distinction is freedom. Freedom opens space for connection that feels different. It feels mutual. It feels steady. It feels safe enough to be real. There is no guessing here, no interpreting, no waiting for the other shoe to drop, just presence meeting presence, and if fear whispers that this calm is temporary, you don't panic. You listen, you regulate, you trust our ability to respond. You know now that you can handle whatever comes without abandoning yourself. That confidence is unshakable. This journey has refined you. It has stripped away illusions. It has strengthened your boundaries. It has taught you that love is not proven through distance or silence, but through consistency and care. That knowledge stays with you. You move forward carrying that truth. You build from it. You choose from it. You love from it. And because of that, your life aligns around it. What no longer fits falls away. What belongs finds its way in. This is not the end of longing. It is the end of confusion. It is the beginning of clarity, lived out loud, of self-respect embodied, of connection that does not cost you yourself. You are not waiting anymore. You are walking forward, grounded, certain, and everything that meets you now will meet a version of you who knows exactly who they are and what they deserve. You don't drift back now. You anchor forward. Because once you stop orbiting uncertainty, your life starts to respond with precision. Things align faster. Decisions feel cleaner. Your body recognizes safety and relaxes into it. That relaxation is not surrender. It is readiness. Readiness changes how you show up. You speak with calm certainty. You listen without scanning for threat. You move with purpose instead of urgency. The old need to be chosen dissolves because you've already chosen yourself. That choice radiates. It informs every interaction without a word being said. This is where momentum turns into momentum you can trust, not the adrenaline of intensity, but the traction of consistency. Day after day, you reinforce the same message to yourself. I matter. My peace matters. My time matters. That message compounds until it becomes unshakable. Unshakable doesn't mean untouched. Feelings still rise, memories still surface, but they don't control you anymore. You allow them to pass without handing them the steering wheel. You stay present. You stay grounded. You stay honest. That honesty keeps you free. Freedom brings discernment. You recognize when connection feels reciprocal and when it feels draining. You notice when words align with actions and when they don't. You don't argue with what you see. You accept it. Acceptance saves energy. Energy is life. Life expands when energy is protected. You invest in growth, in health, in creativity, in friendships that feel mutual, in work that reflects your values. You stop putting your future on hold for someone else's readiness. You build anyway. Building creates evidence. Evidence quiets doubt. You see what you're capable of when your focus isn't fragmented by emotional unpredictability. You see how strong you are when you stop negotiating with confusion. That strength becomes your baseline. From this baseline, love is no longer a puzzle. It's a presence. It's felt in follow-through, in communication, in the ease of knowing where you stand. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to perform. You meet it as you are. This is where urgency becomes resolve. You refuse to spend another season shrinking to fit someone else's limits. You refuse to confuse understanding with self-sacrifice. You refuse to betray your intuition for the comfort of familiarity. These refusals shape your future. Your future begins responding immediately. Opportunities feel clearer, connections feel cleaner. You attract people who can meet your steadiness because you embody it. You don't chase alignment, you live it. Alignment finds you. And if old patterns attempt to return, you recognize them without drama. You don't demonize them, you simply don't re-enter. That restraint is mastery. Mastery protects what you've built. You start to experience a new kind of intimacy, one that doesn't spike and crash, one that doesn't keep you guessing, one that grows through reliability and care. It feels unfamiliar at first because it doesn't activate anxiety. But familiarity is not the same as health. You choose health. Choosing health changes your standards. You value consistency over intensity, presence over pursuit, respect over chemistry. These values don't limit you. They elevate you. They filter out what cannot sustain you. Sustainability becomes your measure. Can this grow without costing me peace? Can this deepen without demanding self-erasure? Can this last without fear? When the answer is yes, you lean in. When it's no, you step back. Simple, powerful, clean. This is how your story transforms. Not through grand declarations, but through quiet, repeated choices. Choices that protect your nervous system. Choices that honor your values. Choices that align your life with who you've become. You are not hardening. You are refining. You are not withdrawing. You are focusing. You are not losing love. You are making space for the kind that can stay with this direction. Commit to it. Defend it when doubt tries to creep in. Let your actions keep teaching your body that safety exists within you. From that place, everything else reorganizes. You move forward now without hesitation, grounded in clarity, guided by self-respect, open to connection that meets you fully. This is not an ending. It is the beginning of a life built on truth. And truth, once chosen, keeps choosing you back. Truth keeps choosing you back, and now it asks something more. Consistency, not once, not when it's easy, every day. Because this level of clarity only stays alive when it's lived, when your actions protect what your awareness revealed, when your choices reinforce who you've become. This is where many people hesitate. They feel the shift, but they don't stabilize it. They drift back toward what's familiar when discomfort rises. But you don't do that anymore. You recognize discomfort as growth, as evidence that you're no longer numbing yourself to fit old patterns. You are building a new internal reference point, one where calm is normal, where peace is expected, where love does not require tension to feel real. That reference point becomes your filter. Everything either aligns with it or falls away, and falling away can feel lonely at first. Not because you're losing connection, but because you're losing noise. The chaos that once distracted you is gone. The constant emotional stimulation is quiet. In that quiet, you finally hear yourself. What you hear is strength, a grounded knowing, a voice that doesn't rush or plead, a voice that says you are allowed to want more without justifying it. That voice grows louder each time you honor it. Honor changes behavior. You stop lingering in conversations that drain you. You stop investing where effort isn't returned. You stop hoping someone will become what they've shown they're not ready to be. You stop waiting. Waiting was never patience. It was fear wearing discipline, fear of loss, fear of starting over, fear of trusting yourself. But you've faced that fear now, and it no longer runs the show. This is where urgency becomes devotion. Devotion to your well-being, devotion to your future, devotion to the life you're building instead of the one you were tolerating. That devotion sharpens your decisions. You choose clarity even when it costs comfort. You choose honesty even when it creates distance. You choose alignment even when it means letting go. These choices hurt briefly, then heal deeply. The pain doesn't linger because it isn't rooted in self-betrayal. Your nervous system begins to trust you. It learns that you will not abandon yourself for attachment. That trust brings regulation. Regulation brings peace. Peace becomes your baseline. From this baseline, your presence changes rooms. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to prove your worth. You don't need to be understood by everyone. You understand yourself. That's enough. Enoughness transforms attraction. You stop being drawn to what withholds. You stop mistaking distance for depth. You stop romanticizing inconsistency. You see it clearly now, and clarity dissolves illusion. What replaces it is grounded desire. Desire for mutual effort, for emotional availability, for connection that doesn't disappear when it deepens. This desire is clean. It doesn't beg. It doesn't bargain. It waits for alignment. Alignment responds. Not always immediately, but inevitably. Because when you live from truth, your life reorganizes around it. People who can meet you step forward. Those who can't step aside, the sorting continues. You no longer fear that process. You trust it. You know that every ending creates space. Every release restores energy. Every boundary strengthens identity. This is not loss. This is refinement. Refinement feels steady. It feels intentional. It feels like standing on solid ground after years of shifting sand. You move slower but with certainty. You choose with discernment. You love without losing yourself. This is what real power feels like. Quiet, stable, unshakable. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't need urgency. It doesn't need drama. It builds patiently, consistently. You carry this forward now into every connection, every decision, every moment where old habits try to resurface. You meet those moments with presence, not panic, with choice, not compulsion. You are no longer becoming this version of yourself. You are living it.